Welcome to this episode of Voices of IFES. This is the last episode of our series of talks from World Assembly 2019. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to listen to previous series, we have our series on World Assembly 2023 also available. Check out next week for a new series of talks from World Assembly 2015. This final talk is from Daniel Bourdanné. He gives a final address as he also leaves his role of General Secretary of IFES.
When you spend 1 week listening to the stories, many of us listening to those stories were in tears. Even right now, as I see my brother from this country, I was almost in tears. Because at the leadership position, you see more clearer what is happening around the world. And this is something that should encourage us to move forward with the gospel of Jesus Christ, to move forward as messengers of hope. We will be returning to our broken world. In some places, going back home is literally like going back to the valley of dry bones described in the book of Ezekiel. Our world is uncertain as we live it today. We see the display of the political, the economical, and military power of some of our political leaders. We are scared because from the human perspective, the world is becoming more and more uncertain. And as IFES, we are in the phase of leadership transition. Maybe our hearts are also full of fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear for the future of IFES. Maybe we are fearful to face our own hearts who have been hurted, and we don't want to add more to it. The bigger fear very often is not the fear from the oppressor, is the fear from our own hearts. For our ministries, we will certainly face big challenges. In North America, they name it campus access challenges. No more freedom to have our Bible studies on campuses. In some places, our movements are not allowed to share the good news of Jesus. They will be facing the danger of imprisonment, and sometimes the real danger of death, including when I was a staff worker. In the part of the country I used to minister to, I faced some occasions where ministry means death. And I was even protected miraculously one time. We will go back facing different challenges. Here is the good news for all of us. As God is sending us back to our places, there is a good news. And what is that good news? The good news is this: Jesus is not sending us out to face our fears, but he sends us to meet him. Jesus is not sending us to face our fears, our challenges, but he is sending us out to meet him. And this is a good news. He is the only one who is able to overcome our fears. He is the only one who will provide security to IFES. Not our constitution, not our doctrinal base, not our ethos, not our networks. Only Jesus is our security, and he is the one who will provide the security for our ministry to go forward. This is why Jesus says, as the Father has sent him, he is sending us with the message of hope. The first message is addressed to us, and that message from Jesus is this today: do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Come and meet me, Jesus is telling us. Go and meet Jesus, because he is already before us. Do not be afraid. Come, counting on my Father's promises. And the scripture, brothers and sisters, is full of promises encouraging us not to be afraid. Exodus 15:16 says, and terrors and dread will fall on them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as a stone until your people pass by. O Lord, until the people you bought pass by. This is what God is telling IFES. Do not be afraid. He is the one who created. He is the one who said, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you go through the rivers, they will not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be scorched. The flames will not set you ablaze. One day, Jesus said to his disciples, let us cross to the other side of the lake. So he got into a boat with them and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. And a squall came down on the lake, so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Master, Master, we are perishing. Then Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters, and they subsided, and all was calm. It is interesting to observe that the situation was actually a prelude to a more challenging encounter on the other side of the lake. He has an encounter with the demon-possessed person on the other side of the lake. It was then a strong spiritual battle. Brothers and sisters, every transition in a Christian world is a spiritual battle. Often we miss the point. We fail in not understanding it clearly. Like the disciples, we get lost in our human and rationalistic logic. And people like us, the children of the Enlightenment, the brain often become an idol. and we miss God's reality. We need to trust Jesus and to not be afraid. Jesus will rebuke the wind. Is it rational for someone to rebuke a wind? Isn't it foolish to rebuke a wind? But this is exactly what Jesus does. But it was a point where he was preparing the disciples for a real experience on the other side of the lake. Because as they crossed the lake, they faced this man possessed with demons, and Jesus was able to cast out the demons. As we go back to our places and context, I would like to take this opportunity to remind us this reality. We spend fantastic time. Maybe it's like Jesus stopping the wind, but for what purpose? To help us, because as we cross this stand, we may face demons, the strong man outside this tent. But don't look at the strong man outside. The strong man may be in us. The strong man may be our selfishness. The strong man may be our lack of obedience to God. The strong man may be our fear of the future. The strong man may be our desire to control everything, like what happened in Genesis when man wanted to be like God in order to control everything. The Lord is inviting us to be ready, because the man possessed is outside. As we go outside, and we need to be ready to face him. But do not look too far away. Look in our hearts. With what things our hearts are full of? Are we carrying the holiness? Are we carrying really the holiness in our hearts? This is very important. I would like to end by suggesting that God is not sending strong people in the world. God is not sending a strong organization in the world. The last few months and our discussions here have reminded us that individually, we are broken people. Collectively, our organization called IFES, spread in 170 countries, is also a broken organization. God is not sending a well-positioned people. God is sending broken people, broken organization to serve in the broken world. And we should remember that salvation is through vulnerability. Vulnerability of God. God's Son himself, he offered himself to vulnerability, to die. We cannot carry the message of God from a strong position, from a position of power, from a position of control. If we have to be messengers of hope, we need to start from the vulnerability posture. We go out as vulnerable people. And this helps us actually to understand our world is broken. If we don't go through the brokenness, through the vulnerability by ourselves, it will be difficult to minister to a broken world. because we cannot understand them. And this is why incarnation is a very strong theological posture. Why the Son of God decided to come and to live among us. He does in order to understand us. He made himself vulnerable in order to understand us. So IFES, we are going in the world from the position of vulnerability. We should not play power game. We should stop playing power game. We should give ourselves to vulnerability so that we can understand. A vulnerable mission to vulnerable people, this is the incarnational principle revealed and demonstrated by Jesus through his life. IFES is a broken movement, a vulnerable movement, driven by ordinary students, guided by ordinary staff. IFES has never been a successful financial organization. We live a day-to-day life. We should maintain that level of vulnerability because the vulnerability should be our identity, brothers and sisters. If we start playing power game, that will be the end of IFES. And we can easily be destroyed by our success. Maybe during these days, God is reminding us to be careful about what we may call success. Because we may take glory and go out. When I travel, when I mention the name of IFES, people are so excited. Our success is also our weaknesses. Brothers and sisters, if we don't take the posture of vulnerability, unity among us is impossible. Let's leave this place, not as conquerors, showing our powers. Let's leave this place being invited by Christ to gradually, maybe painfully, develop the courage to be weak. Yes, the courage to be weak. Not only to be weak, the courage to be ready even to die. At the face of our opponent, who are ruling the world with their muscles, with their military power, the power of money, the power of technology, we are invited to oppose them with something weak. That is patience, that is truth, that is love, that is weakness, that is service, that is modesty, that is respect. We are encouraged to go back home, not with the triumphalism gospel broadcasted by the supper apostles, the supper spirituals, the supper theologians, the supper pastors. We are invited to return to our places, preaching the good news of Jesus through our brokenness attitude. We are invited to return with the attitudes of Apostle Paul. My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weaknesses. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Vulnerable people, broken organization, go and serve the broken world. Go in peace to serve the Lord in this vulnerable mission. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. We have a new episode every Wednesday, and if you want to listen to previous episodes, We have interviews from staff from all around the world, and we have our last series on World Assembly 2023. Make sure you subscribe to where you're listening to your podcast, and make sure you follow us on all our social media platforms, including WhatsApp.